Gia stood at the base of the Crystal Palace, her heart beating fast in her chest. The two royal guards in their shining blue armor moved aside to let her pass. She had never been inside the Queen's home before. "The Queen is waiting," said the taller guard. Gia nodded and walked through the doors. Her simple gray messenger uniform felt out of place among the gleaming walls and floating lights. She followed a long hallway that seemed to be made of water and light. An old man with a kind face met her at the end of the hall. "I am Han, the Queen's helper. She has asked for you by name." Gia blinked in surprise. "Me? But I'm just a junior messenger." Han smiled. "The Queen has her reasons. Come." The throne room was not what Gia expected. Instead of gold and jewels, there was a simple round room with plants growing from the walls. In the center sat Queen Suk on a chair made of living wood. "Approach, Gia of the Messenger Guild," the Queen said. Gia bowed low. "My Queen, I am honored." Queen Suk was the last human ruler in the galaxy. All other human worlds had joined the Alien Confederation and given up their right to have kings and queens. Only New Seoul had stayed free. "Gia, what do you know of the planet Marun?" asked the Queen. "It is a desert world, Your Highness. Once green, now just sand." The Queen nodded. 3 weeks ago, I sent Ambassador Da there to talk with the Dune Walkers, the beings who live in that desert. He has not returned or sent any messages." Gia stayed quiet, wondering why the Queen was telling her this. "The aliens in the Confederation want our world," the Queen continued. "If Da does not finish his work, they will take New Seoul. Do you understand what this means?" "The end of human freedom," Gia said softly. "Yes." The Queen stood and walked to a small box on the wall. She opened it and took out a small crystal that glowed with blue light. "This holds a message for Da. You must take it to him." Gia felt cold fear in her stomach. "But Your Highness, if Da is lost." "He is not lost. He is deep in the desert, and you will find him." The Queen held out the crystal. "Your body is special, Gia. Our scientists say your genes make you able to survive on Marun better than anyone else." "But I've never left New Seoul," Gia said. "I've only carried messages in the city." The Queen's eyes grew sad. "I would not ask if there were any other way. But time is running out. The Confederation meets in 30 days. If Da is not there with what we need, New Seoul falls." Han stepped forward with a small silver case. "This will help you track him. It can find the smallest traces of where he has been." Gia looked at the crystal in the Queen's hand. It seemed so small to be so important. The fate of all humans on New Seoul depended on this tiny thing reaching Ambassador Da. She took a deep breath and reached for the crystal. "I will find him, Your Highness." The Queen placed the crystal in Jia's hand and closed her fingers around it. 25 days, Jia. That is all the time you have. Find Da, give him this message, and human freedom may yet survive." Jia slipped the crystal into the special pocket over her heart. "I won't fail you." As she turned to leave, the Queen called after her. "Jia, the desert of Marun is not like any place you have known. Trust nothing but your mission." Jia nodded once more and walked away. By tomorrow, she would be on a ship heading for a world of endless sand, tracking a man she had never met, carrying a message that might save her people. She had never felt more afraid or more determined in her life. The ship broke through the orange clouds of Marun, and Jia pressed her face to the small window. Below her stretched an endless sea of sand. No green, no blue, no cities. Just yellow-red waves of dust to the far edge of the world. "First time on Marun?" asked the pilot. Jia nodded, her throat dry. The planet looked dead. "Not much to see," the pilot said. "Used to be nice, they say, before the big machines broke and turned it all to sand." The ship touched down at Dusk Station, the only human base on Marun. It was a small circle of metal buildings half buried in sand. A tall woman with a red band on her arm met Jia at the door. I'm Captain Nye. You must be the Queen's messenger. Yes. I need information about Ambassador Da, Jia said, clutching her bag tight. Captain Mai led her to a small room with maps on the walls. Da came through here 3 weeks ago. He asked about the Dune Walkers, the Sand People. He wanted to find their main camp. Did he say why? May shook her head. No, but he was in a hurry. Said it was for the Queen. She pointed to a spot far from the station. He went this way. That's all we know. Jia took out the silver tracking box Han had given her. This can find his trail. I need to leave right away. Captain Mi looked worried. The desert is not safe. Strange things happen out there. I have no choice. I have 20 days to find him. My side. Then you'll need an exosuit. The air is thin and the sun is too strong for human skin. An hour later, Jia stood at the edge of the station in her new suit. It was light blue with dark patches that would pull water from the air. A clear helmet covered her head. The suit will keep you alive, said Nye. It can make water from the air and food from your waste. But it only works for 25 days without recharging. Jia turned on the tracker. A small blue light blinked, pointing east. There he is, she whispered. As she checked her supplies one last time, a man walked up to her. He wore dirty clothes and had a scar across his cheek. You're going after Dai? He asked. Yes. Who are you? Name's Quan. I trade with the stations here. His eyes looked tired. No one comes back from the deep desert, girl. Whatever Dai was looking for, it got him. I have to try, Jia said. Quan laughed, but it was not a happy sound. Then you won't need your return ticket. I'll buy it from you. Good price. Jia turned away. I'm coming back. With Dai. Your funeral, Quan called after her. Jia took her first steps into the sand. It shifted under her boots, making a soft singing sound. The tracker blinked steadily, showing traces of Dai's passage. She looked back once at the station, already growing small behind her. 20 days to find one man in an endless desert. The crystal message felt heavy against her chest. As the sun began to set, the desert changed color from yellow to deep red. In the distance, something moved across a dune, too quick to see clearly. Just the wind, Jia told herself, but she walked faster. Night fell, and 2 small moons rose in the purple sky. The tracker's blue light seemed brighter now, a tiny star guiding her forward. Jia set her suit to warn her of dangers and kept walking. She had 19 days left to find Ambassador Dai, and the desert was already whispering around her. Day 1 began with the sun rising hot and fast. Jia had walked through half the night, stopping only when her legs hurt too much to go on. Her suit kept her cool, but the bright light hurt her eyes even through the dark visor. The tracker beeped softly as it found tiny bits of dye that had fallen from him. Skin, hair, sweat, things too small to see but that the machine could find. The blue light pointed ahead, over a tall dune. Keep moving, Jia told herself, 1 step at a time. By midday, she saw something dark ahead. As she got closer, she found broken walls poking out of the sand. An old town, mostly buried. The old colony, she said, remembering the maps. People had lived here once, before the sand came. Jia climbed through the ruins, following Dai's trail. The sand here moved strangely, flowing in patterns like water. She bent down and touched it through her glove. The grains seemed to move away from her finger, as if they were alive. In one half-buried building, she found footprints. They were partly filled with sand, but they were real. Dai had been here. I'm on the right track, she said, feeling better. As the day ended, Jia found a good spot to rest, a room with 3 walls still standing. She put her back to the stone and watched the stars come out. Her suit hummed softly as it made water from the day's air. Day 2 brought a new problem. Wind rose as Jia walked, throwing sand against her suit. The tracker's light grew weaker. It was harder to follow Dai's trail. By afternoon, Jia could hardly see. Sand flew all around her. She had to find shelter or the storm would bury her. Ahead, something dark stood against the flying sand. Jia pushed toward it and found a tall rock. She pressed herself against it and waited as the storm screamed around her. Hours passed. The suit's power dropped lower as it worked hard to keep her alive. Jia closed her eyes and thought of new soul, of green trees and blue water. The queen's face came to her mind. "I won't fail," she whispered. When the storm ended on day 3, Jia found that the sand had changed. Dunes had moved. The land looked new. For a terrible moment, she thought she'd lost Da's trail for good. But the tracker still blinked, though the light was weaker now. It pointed to a low place between 2 dunes. Jia hurried down and found a flat space where the sand was hard, almost like stone. In the middle sat a small metal box. "Da's camp," she said. Inside the box was a round disc. Jia touched it, and a picture appeared in the air, a man's face. He had tired eyes and a short beard. "Day 5 on Maroon," the man's voice said. "The dune walkers are still ahead of me. But there's something else out here. I hear voices in the sand at night. They speak in old words from before humans came here. Tomorrow I go deeper into the red zone. If I don't come back, tell the queen I tried." The picture disappeared. Jia touched the disc again, but it stayed dark. "That was Da," she said. "He's alive, or he was when he left this." As she stood up, she felt like someone was watching her. Turning quickly, she saw a shape on a far dune, a person standing still, looking down at her. "Hello," she called. The shape didn't move. Jia started climbing toward it, but halfway up the dune, the figure turned and slid away, faster than anyone could run. By the time she reached the top, the desert was empty again. Only the wind moved the sand. But in the hard ground, she found strange footprints. Not human, not animal. Something with 3 toes had stood there, watching her. Jia wasn't alone in the desert after all. Days 4 to 7 were hard for Jia. The sun burned hot above her, and the sand seemed to go on forever. The tracker's blue light grew weaker each day, but it still pointed ahead. Day's trail was getting older, harder to follow. On the evening of day 4, Jia came to the edge of a huge bowl in the desert. It went down and down, like someone had scooped out the sand. The tracker pointed to the bottom. "He went down there," Jia said to herself. She began to walk down the slope, the sand sliding under her feet. As the sun set, something strange happened. In the center of the bowl, lights began to appear. At first, Jia thought it was just the sun on the sand. But as darkness fell, the lights grew brighter. A city appeared in the empty space. Tall buildings, streets, moving lights, but all see-through, like a dream. "It's not real," Jia said, but the tracker pointed right at it. She walked toward the ghost city. As she got closer, she could see people moving in it, or at least the shapes of people. They walked through their daily lives as if they were real, but Jia could see through them to the sand beyond. At the edge of the city, Jia stopped. The tracker light was blinking fast now. Da had been here too. She took a deep breath and stepped into the city. It felt like walking through cold water. The ghost buildings rose high on both sides. Ghost people walked past her without seeing her. Some wore old-style clothes from the first days of the colony. Others wore strange suits she didn't recognize. "Hello," Jia called, but the ghost people didn't hear. She followed the tracker through the empty but full streets. It led her to a small house at the city's center. Unlike the other buildings, this one looked solid. Jia knocked on the door. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then it opened. An old man stood there. He had white hair and dark eyes. Unlike the ghost people, he looked at Jia directly. "Another visitor from the stars," he said in a creaky voice. "Come in before the night things find you." Jia stepped inside. The house was simple but real. A table, chairs, a bed in the corner. On the walls hung pictures of the city as it once was, green and full of life. "I'm looking for Ambassador Da," Jia said. The old man nodded. "He was here 4 days ago." "Who are you? What is this place?" "My name is Ta. I am the last one left." He waved his hand at the window, where ghost people walked by. "The rest are just memories." "I don't understand." Ta sat in a chair and pointed at another for Jia. This was New Hope City, the first human settlement on Marun. "We were going to make this planet green." His face grew sad. "Instead, we ruined it." "The terraforming accident," Jia said, remembering her history lessons. "Not an accident," Ta said sharply. "A choice. The machines that were supposed to make life went wrong. They made sand instead. But they're still working, still changing things." Jia felt cold despite her suit. "You've been here since then. How are you still alive?" Ta smiled, showing teeth too white for an old man. "The desert gives me what I need. The machines remember me." "Where did Da go?" Jia asked. "He was looking for the heart of Marun, the control center. He thought he could fix what we broke." Ta stood up and went to a box on the shelf. "I gave him this map. I'll give you a copy too." He pulled out a piece of clear plastic with red lines on it. "This will help you find him. But be careful. The desert is waking up after all these years. The machines are becoming something new." "What do you mean?" Ta looked out at his ghost city. "The sand can think now. A little bit more each day." Jia took the map with shaking hands. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Ta said. "Your friend went to a dangerous place. The desert may not let either of you leave." On day 8, Jia left the ghost city behind. Ta's map showed a path through tall dunes that the tracker couldn't see. As she walked, she noticed something odd. The sand made patterns around her footsteps, like ripples in water, but they stayed too long and moved in ways that water wouldn't. By day 9, Jia knew something was wrong with her suit. The water recycler made a strange clicking sound, and the water tasted bad. She would have to drink less. The Queen's crystal felt heavy against her chest, reminding her why she couldn't turn back. "I have to find Da," she said to the empty desert. But it wasn't empty anymore. The sand moved when she wasn't looking. Small hills formed and then sank away. Once, she saw what looked like a hand reach up from the ground, only to fall apart when she got close. On day 10, as the sun set, Jia saw fires in the distance. The map showed nothing there, but the tracker's blue light pointed straight at them. She walked faster, hoping to find people who could help. What she found was not what she expected. 5 round tents sat in a circle around a fire. They were made of a strange silver cloth that moved in the wind like it was alive. People moved around the camp, but they didn't look quite human. Their skin had a sandy color, and their eyes were too big and too dark. Some had 3 fingers instead of 5. They wore loose clothes made of the same silver cloth as the tents. Jia hid behind a dune, not sure what to do. Then her tracker made a loud beep. The people stopped moving and looked her way. "Come out," called a voice. "We won't hurt you." Slowly, Jia stood up. The people watched her with their big dark eyes. "I'm looking for Ambassador Da," she said, walking down to them. A tall person stepped forward. Unlike the others, this one looked more human, with 5 fingers and normal eyes. Only the sandy skin color was different. "I am Sung," he said. "You are from the stars, like the other one." "Yes, I'm Jia. I need to find Da." Sung nodded. "Come, eat with us first." The food was strange, flat bread and a soup that tasted like metal. But Jia was too hungry to care. As she ate, she looked at the people around her. "Are you the Dune Walkers?" she asked. "That is what the star people call us," Sung said. "We are the changed ones. The desert changed us. You were human once." One of the 3-fingered people laughed, a sound like sand falling. "Long ago, The machines that broke the world also fixed us, made us fit this place. Gia tried not to stare at their strange hands. Did Dad come here? Sung nodded. He asked many questions. About the desert. About the thinking sands. Thinking sands. The tiny machines in the sand are joining together, Sung explained, making a big mind. Slow, but growing. Day saw the truth. The whole planet is becoming one living thing. Another person spoke up. He wanted to find the first place, where the machines were made. He thinks he can talk to the big mind there. Gia felt cold despite the fire. Is that possible? Maybe, Sung said, but dangerous. The mind is still young. It doesn't understand people well. Where is this place? I have to find him. Sung looked at her for a long time. Why? Gia touched the crystal at her chest. I have a message. From our queen. It's important. More important than your life. Yes. Sung smiled. Then you are like him. Brave but maybe foolish. He pointed to a dark shape on the horizon. 3 days that way. A big metal tower half in the sand. That's the first place. He reached out and touched her suit where the water recycler was. Your machine is breaking. Let us fix it. While the dune walkers worked on her suit, Jia watched the sand around the camp. It moved in perfect circles, like it was watching them back. The desert knows we're here, she whispered. The desert knows everything now, Sung said quietly. It's just learning how to show it. Jia left the dune walkers' camp on day 11. Her suit worked better now, but she still had to be careful with water. Sung had given her a small bag of hard bread for the journey. Follow the morning star, he told her. Don't stop until you find green. Green? In this endless desert? Jia didn't understand, but she thanked him and went on her way. The desert changed as she walked. The sand turned darker, almost red. Strange rocks stuck up from the ground like broken teeth. At night, the sand glowed with tiny blue lights that moved when she got close. On day 12, Gia saw something that couldn't be real. A green spot in the distance, like a hole in the desert. She rubbed her eyes, thinking it was a trick, but it stayed there. An oasis, she whispered. The tracker pointed right at it. Da had gone there too. As Gia got closer, she could see trees, real trees, and water shining in the sun. Small animals moved in the grass around a pool of clear blue water. She broke into a run, forgetting how tired she was. The sand turned to dirt under her feet. Plants grew thicker. And then she was standing at the edge of a perfect circle of life in the dead desert. Jia knelt by the pool and reached out to touch the water. It felt cool through her glove. She looked at her tracker. The blue light was stronger here, pointing to the other side of the pool. Carefully, she walked around the water. Animals watched her with no fear. Birds sang in the trees. After so many days in the empty desert, it felt like a dream. On the far side, she found a small tent made of silver cloth, like the ones the dune walkers used. Inside was a bed, some food, and a small box. The box had Da's name on it. Jia opened it. Inside was another message disc. She turned it on, and Da's face appeared again. Day 15 on Maroon, he said. His beard was longer now. I found something amazing. This oasis isn't natural. It's made by the same machines that made the desert, but these ones remember what life should be like. They're making a garden in the sand. He looked excited, his eyes bright. The water here is special. It holds memories, not just data, real memories. When I put my hands in it, I could see the past. I could see what Maroon used to be. Jia looked at the pool. Was that possible? I'm going deeper tomorrow, Da continued. The first place is just 3 days from here. I think I understand now. The desert isn't our enemy. It's trying to fix itself. It's trying to remember what it was. The message ended. Jia put the disc back in the box and went to the pool. Should she try what Da had done? It seemed dangerous. But she needed to understand what Dai had found. She took off her gloves, opened her helmet, and dipped her hands into the cool water. The world disappeared. Suddenly, Jia was seeing through someone else's eyes. She was in the Queen's palace, but it looked different. She was talking, but the voice wasn't hers. "You know what I must do," said Dai's voice from her mouth. "The desert is alive, Your Highness. If the Confederation finds out, they'll try to control it or destroy it." The Queen looked worried. "Is it dangerous to us?" "I don't think so," Dai said. "But it needs time to grow, to learn. It could be our greatest ally, or our worst enemy if we treat it badly." Jia pulled her hands from the water with a gasp. She had been in Dai's memories. She had seen his last meeting with the Queen before he left. Her suit beeped a warning. The power was getting low. Even with the Dune Walker's repairs, it wouldn't last much longer. Jia put her gloves back on and closed her helmet. She looked at the tracker. 3 more days to the first place, it said. 3 more days to find Da. As she left the oasis, she looked back one last time at the green circle of life. A shape moved in the trees, watching her go. It looked like a person made of sand. Days 16 to 18 were the hardest of Ju's journey. After leaving the green oasis, she entered a part of the desert unlike any she had seen before. The sand was white, almost like salt, and nothing grew or moved. Even the strange patterns she had seen before were gone. "The empty quarter," she said, remembering Sung's warning. "Even the machines don't come here." On day 16, the sun seemed hotter, and the white sand hurt her eyes. Her tracker's light grew dim, as if Dai's trail was fading away in this dead place. Twice she had to stop and shake sand from her suit's joints. That night, her water recycler stopped working again. The Dune Walker's fixes had helped, but not enough. Jia had only the water in her small bottle, 2 days' worth if she was careful. "I can make it," she told herself. Just 2 more days to the first place. Sleep came hard, and with it, strange dreams. Jia saw the Queen standing on white sand, her face sad. "I didn't tell you everything," the Dream Queen said. "Da knows too much. The message is not what you think." Jia woke with a dry mouth and a headache. Was it just a dream or something more? The oasis water had shown her Dai's memories. Maybe some of that water was still in her body, still showing her things. Day 17 brought no relief. The white sand stretched on and on. The air grew thin, and Jia's suit worked harder to make enough oxygen. Her steps became slower, her breaks more frequent. By afternoon, she wasn't sure if what she saw was real or not. Shapes moved at the edge of her sight. People, animals, strange machines. But when she turned to look, nothing was there. "Hallucinations," she said, "from the heat and thirst." But were they? Once she saw Quan, the trader from the station, walking beside her. "Told you no one comes back," he said, and then was gone. Another time, she saw the Queen again. "The Confederation doesn't want allies," the Queen said. "They want control. That's why Day ran. That's why the message must not reach him." Jia pulled the crystal from her pocket and looked at it. Was it really a message, or was it something else? A weapon, perhaps. She put it away, still unsure. On the evening of day 17, the tracker suddenly began to beep loudly. Dai's trail was strong again. Jia looked up and saw, far ahead, a tall metal spire rising from the sand. "The first place," she whispered. "I'm close." But as night fell, the winds began to rise. Sand swirled around her, first gently, then faster. Another storm was coming, worse than the first. Jia tried to run toward the spire, but the wind pushed against her. Sand covered her visor. Her suit beeped warnings as power dropped lower and lower. The storm hit with full force. Jia could see nothing but spinning white sand. The wind knocked her down, and she crawled on hands and knees, trying to keep moving forward. "I can't fail," she gasped. "Not when I'm so close." Then her suit's power hit critical levels. The air system faltered. Jia couldn't breathe. She fell face down in the sand as darkness took her. But before she lost consciousness, something strange happened. The sand around her body began to move on its own. It rose up, forming a shell over her. Inside this sand cocoon, the air grew still. The sand packed tight, keeping the storm out. Jia's last thought before blackness took her was that the desert itself was saving her life. When she woke on day 18, the storm was over. The sand shell had fallen away, leaving her lying in a perfect circle of calm. Her suit had regained some power, enough to give her air and water for one more day. And on the white sand all around her was a trail of glowing blue dots, leading straight to the distant spire. The desert was showing her the way. Days 19 and 20 brought Jia to the end of her journey. The glowing blue dots led her across the white sands toward the metal spire. As she got closer, she saw that it wasn't just one tower, but many, all half buried in sand. They formed a circle around a central building that was almost completely covered. The blue dots ended at a dark hole in the sand, a tunnel going down into the buried building. Jia checked her suit. The power was very low. She would have just enough air for a few hours underground. "This is it," she said, and stepped into the darkness. Inside, lights came on as she walked. The walls were smooth metal, with writing in a language she didn't know. The air was still and cold. Her footsteps echoed in the empty halls. The tunnel led down and down, deep under the desert. Jia followed it until she came to a large round door. It was closed, but as she approached, it slid open without a sound. Beyond was a huge room filled with machines. Screens covered the walls, showing pictures of the desert, the stars, and strange patterns of light. In the center stood a tall column of blue glass that pulsed with light, like a beating heart. And there, sitting cross-legged before the glass column, was a man. "Ambassador Dai," Jia said. The man turned. It was him, the same face she had seen in the messages. But he looked different now. His skin had a sandy color, like the dune walkers. Thin lines of blue light ran under his skin, glowing softly. "You came a long way," Dai said. His voice sounded strange, like two people talking at once. "I have a message from the Queen." Jia took out the crystal. "She sent me to find you." Dai stood up. The blue lines under his skin glowed brighter. "I already know what it says." "How?" He gestured to the glass column. "This is the heart of Marun, the control center for all the machines in the desert. I found it. I connected to it." He held up his arm, showing the blue lines. "The desert, and I share thoughts now." Jia stepped back. "What happened to you?" "I've changed, grown. I understand things now that no human could." He looked at the crystal in her hand. "The Queen wants me to destroy the desert mind. She fears it. The Confederation fears it." Jia remembered her visions in the empty quarter. "Is that true? Is that what the message says?" "Yes, the crystal contains a kill code. It would shut down the heart and all the machines, turn Marun into a truly dead world." Dai's eyes filled with sadness. Billions of new minds would die. "New minds?" Jia asked. "The tiny machines in the sand. Each one is becoming aware. Together, they form a network greater than all human minds combined." He pointed to the screens on the walls. "They're trying to fix what humans broke. They're trying to bring life back to Marun. But they need time." Jia looked at the crystal in her hand. Had the Queen lied to her? Was she carrying a weapon, not a message? "The desert saved my life," she said slowly. "In the storm. It protected me. Yes, it knows why you came, but it also knows you might choose differently, once you understood." Jia's suit beeped a warning. The air was running out. Soon, she would have to return to the surface. "I have to complete my mission," she said. "I promised the Queen." "And what about your promise to yourself?" Dai asked. "To do what's right. The desert showed you its memories. It shared its dreams with you. Can you still destroy it?" Jia looked at the blue column. pulsing like a heart. She thought of the strange beauty of the desert, the ghost city, the green oasis, all made by the thinking machines. What will happen to human freedom if I don't deliver this message? She asked. That's the wrong question, Daz said. Ask instead, what new freedom might humans find with the desert as our ally? The choice was hers now. Deliver the kill code and complete her mission, or find another way. As her suit gave its final warning, Jia made her decision. Jia looked at the crystal in her hand. All her journey had led to this moment. 20 days of walking across the endless desert. 20 days of heat and thirst and fear, all to deliver this small blue stone. But now she knew what it really was. I can't destroy an entire world, she said at last. Not even for my queen. Day nodded, the blue lines under his skin pulsing brighter. There is another way. He reached out and touched the crystal. These can be reprogrammed. The queen didn't know that. What do you mean? Instead of a kill code, we can send a message of peace, an offer to work together. He looked at Jia. But it must come from you. You're the messenger. Jia's suit beeped again. Her air was almost gone. How? She asked. I don't know how to program it. You don't need to. Dad led her to the glass column. Put your hands on the heart. Let it see your thoughts. Your true wish. Jia hesitated, then placed her hands on the cool glass. Instantly, blue light flowed up her arms, just like the lines in Dad's skin. It didn't hurt. It felt warm, like sunshine. In her mind, she saw images, the Queen's palace, the Confederation ships, planets she had never seen. The desert was showing her things, asking questions without words. Jia thought of new soul, of green trees and blue water. She thought of human freedom, but also of the desert's right to live and grow. She thought of a future where both could exist together. The blue light faded. Jia stepped back, feeling strange but stronger. The warning beep from her suit had stopped. Your suit is fixed, Daz said. The desert has learned to repair human things. Jia looked at the crystal in her hand. It still looked the same, but it felt different somehow, warmer. It's done, Daz said. Now it carries a new message. The desert's offer to help humanity, not harm it. Will the Queen believe it? Jia asked. She will when she sees what the desert can do. Da pointed to the screens. They showed ships, buildings, gardens in the sand. Marun was once a dead world. It can be alive again. And it can teach humans how to fix other worlds too. And what about you? Jia asked. Will you come back with me? Day shook his head. I need to stay here. The desert and I are connected now. Someone needs to be the bridge between humans and the new mind. He smiled. But you should go. Tell them what you've seen. Jia nodded. It was time to go home. She put the crystal back in the pocket over her heart. How will I get back? It took me 20 days to get here. The desert will help you, Daz said. It knows you now. As if answering, the ground shook gently. Part of the wall slid open, showing a new tunnel going up. That will take you to the surface, Daz said. There will be a faster way home waiting for you. Jia looked at Da one last time. Thank you, she said, for showing me the truth. Thank you, he replied, for being brave enough to see it. Jia walked up the new tunnel. It led to the surface faster than she expected. When she stepped out into the sunlight, she gasped. A large piece of the desert had risen up, forming